Hello and welcome to History Through Fiction, the podcast. I'm your host, Colin Mustful, and today I'm happy to be joined by Donna Jones Alward, author of Ship of Dreams. Donna, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with these two main characters, Hannah and Louisa. Who are they and what drew you to their stories?
Hannah and Louisa are best friends, but they're very different women. Hannah is married. Her marriage is in jeopardy. Her husband is going on a business trip to New York and beyond aboard Titanic, and so her plan is to go along and try to start to fix their marriage. She wants to get it back to where it was when they were happy. And of course, when you're trying to fix your marriage, you ask your best friend to come along and third wheel. But while he is off doing his work things, the plan is for her to remain in New York. And she and Lou, her friend Lou, will spend sort of what we would call a girls' week, right? They're going to go to the theater, shop, maybe on Fifth Avenue, enjoy some delicious food, just enjoy New York. And so that's the plan. She invites Lou along. Lou is very different from Hannah. They're both like 26. Lou is single. She has no plans to change that. She's a suffragette. She believes in women's rights. She's a bit of a firecracker. And so she's going to get into some trouble as they're on board and going first class to New York. And what drew me to them, I think, right now, I think as a woman of a certain age, perhaps, but I'm very interested in female friendships, in women helping other women, and in women's rights. And it felt like such a natural fit to talk about not only Hannah and Lou, but some of the first class women that were on board that were outliers, like Margaret Brown and Helen Churchill Candy and Renee Harris and be able to bring those women on in sort of walk-on roles to help with that whole sense of community and like I said, women helping other women.
So you're writing about women who are in first class. Can you tell us a little bit about researching what that experience was like? Obviously, it was very opulent. I'm assuming what did you find out about what they actually had available to them?
It almost staggering how beautiful it was and what went into that. One of the things that struck me as I was doing my research was, I would have expected some fresh flowers, right? This is first class. But there were a lot of fresh flowers, and the reason was the paint, you could still smell the paint. The ship was that new, so it helped mask the scent of the paint, which I thought was a really interesting detail. Um, Definitely, we're looking at 7-course meals for dinner, like meals were an event. I just got back from a vacation where each night was like four courses, and it was already a 2-hour event. So I can't imagine doing seven. Um, and yeah, so there was that. There were the fashions, jewelry, lots of leisure time. And I think for me, I'm not really a fashion girl. I love shiny things. I'm not going to lie. But when it comes to fashion, um, I read a book called Titanic Style, and it was first class down to third, men, women, and children, and what they would have worn, top to bottom and underneath. And I found that book so helpful as to what they would have worn and the designers of the time and yeah, so I found it really actually kind of interesting and aren't we always attracted to the lives of the rich and famous? So, that kind of played into that a little bit.
So you mentioned a book you read in your research. With so many books and stories out there about the Titanic, how did you kind of wiggle your way in? Was that a challenge for you at all to find a different angle?
I I don't think it was necessarily a challenge to find a different angle. I think it's finding your angle because there's so much information and what do you want to include and what don't you want to include and for me it my editor said to me and she was very right. She goes, "Remember, Titanic's not the story. The characters are the story." And I'm like, "Oh, right," because you learn so many interesting things that you could just write a book about what happened, to the ship. But the story's actually not about the ship. The ship is this, and the sinking is helps form the structure and what happens. But the actual story is really about the characters. So I just had to keep reminding myself of that if I got a little too like lost in the sauce of the history, I guess. Yeah.
Well, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's kind of typical of historical fiction. The history it provides that structure, that framework, but then the story is about the characters and how they respond to that a little bit. You coming from a background of writing
Right.
romance and now only recently coming to historical fiction, have you kind of discovered that to as a way to help you write better historicals?
I think so, because when I have to remind myself that the story is about the characters, then I'm like, yes, I need to be talking about, their deep point of view, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, their relationships with other people. And while romance focuses on, the hero and heroine, with historical fiction, I love being able to explore other relationships. But I think having come from romance where, it's second nature to talk about what's going on inside your character. That's really helpful. And but then the other side of me like really likes nerding out on the history. So if I find I've indulged that part of me a little too much, then I'm like, no, 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 go back, go back. It's about the characters. Um, and but I do think that's helped a lot. It's amazing how many of those skills I learned while writing romance are actually transferable. And I think character development is probably the strongest one.
As a coach, a sports coach, I find the same thing between sports. Like you can relate one skill in one sport and relate it to another, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, and you just tweak it to whatever genre you're writing or whatever sport you're playing, right? Like
Mm.
it's maybe not directly transferable, but it's enough that you can bring it over and use it, and just shape it in a different way. So
Well, can you nerd out for us a little bit here because I know you probably couldn't put all those interesting details on the page. And looking at your book club guide, you did mention the flowers, which I thought was fascinating. Anything
yeah.
else that you found that was like, wow, I can't believe this?
Well, I think what's really interesting, and I ended up discovering this when I did research for my previous book, which was When the World Fell Silent and set during the Halifax explosion. Because I did want to include the Halifax connection to the Titanic tragedy. And so when I was researching When the World Fell Silent, I learned, because that happened 5 years later, I learned that the identification method used, for example, with the bodies, was actually developed during the Titanic tragedy by a registrar here in Halifax named J.H. Barnstead. And it's all about cataloging the condition of the body, what it looks like, clothing, personal effects. It catalogs it all. Everyone is assigned a number. What happens to those effects? It was just this system that he developed that ended up being called the Barnstead method and is still used. It became kind of a mainstay of forensics, and so I found that really interesting that it was, the guy who signs the death certificates actually developed this huge forensic method in Halifax. So I nerded out on that a little bit, and just how things were done. And I think as I went through the research and you look at a timeline of how everything sort of fit together between the 14th of April and the 15th. And you just realize that so many things had to happen in order for the ship to be on a collision course with that exact iceberg at that time. Like if anything had been different, it probably never would have happened. If they weren't traveling so fast, if what would have happened if they'd actually had their lifeboat drills on Sunday morning, but they didn't because church went long, and so that was canceled. Um, how many people would have been saved if they'd filled the lifeboats? Even during the design of the ship, only um, the first bulkheads were watertight, and after that they were not. But of course, the iceberg hit on the side. And so, what if they'd all been watertight? What if they had hit it straight on and not turned and ripped along the side? Would the damage have been as bad? Would the ship have actually, sunk? So there are all kinds of little conditions, and I found that like endlessly interesting to discover that if anything had been a little different, if the lookouts had had binoculars, because they didn't. They should have had, but they didn't. So all these little pieces that have to be, the conditions have to be just right for this tragedy to happen. It's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, wow, I did not know any of those little details.
Nerd alert.
So a lot of Titanic stories are about the people who perished, but there were a lot of survivors. And you did talk about Halifax. Talk a little bit more about Halifax's role and tell us a little bit about what happened to the survivors after this tragedy.
So when the world found out what had happened, and I mean, you can go back to 1912 and do a search for, Titanic newspaper headlines or whatever. Newspapers.com is great for that. And you can see all the fake news. Like fake news is not new. And but what really happened was, ships were sent out from Halifax to retrieve the bodies. Uh, 700 and change were saved and taken aboard the Carpathia and all taken to New York. And what happened from there is very varied. Some people get on another ship and went back to England. For some people, this was home, and so they stayed. For other people, they got there and, would have liked to have turned around and gone back, but either had no money or there were a number of people who were afraid to get back on a ship. And can you blame them? Um, if your plane crashed, would you be anxious to fly again? Um, and so, various things happened. Some people would have gone to Halifax to bring back bodies like Vincent, J.J. Astor's son, instead of because Madeline was saved. Madeline stayed at home. Vincent went to Halifax and retrieved his dad's body and took it home. So, it's very varied what happened. But what's really interesting is that even though there was not a huge direct impact on Halifax, I mean, George Wright died. Hilda Slater was on board. But uh, even though Halifax didn't lose a lot of people, when the ship came back carrying the bodies, and when survivors came to check to see if their loved ones had survived or not survived, sorry, been brought back, had been picked up and found, Halifax was in mourning. There was, black draping over shop windows. Like this was a city that was in mourning for a population not its own. And I found that really interesting. And I was not surprised at all because I live here. And Nova Scotia has a really interesting vibe about it. And the fact that we would mourn for victims of a tragedy that, really don't have much to do with us, is exactly what we would do. But I found that a really interesting detail, and I think we see it again. Man, there are so many stories I could write, but um, we see a lot of the same behavior and that same willingness to help and be there for people and mourn with people. When the Swiss air crash, back in the late 90s that happened off of Peggy's Cove. Um, and families came here from all over the world, and we came together and housed them and fed them and mourned with them, and you know yeah, that story is that's really, we sent people out to try to bring back effects and honestly body parts. And when you look at collective trauma from things, like I said, that story is probably going to be told at some point. Um, But yeah, just endlessly interesting how things, interconnect and intersect. Sorry, that was like a really tangential answer. You just kind of
That's okay. That's really all
got me and I
quite
ran with it.
fascinating, and those human emotional elements are such an important part of the story, and I'm glad that you're able to cover some of that in this novel.
I think that's really what it's about. I mean, everybody knows that Titanic sank and that it went to, they were picked up, they were taken to New York, and bodies were brought back here. Like, those are the facts, but that's not the story. The story is about humanity and how we respond to things, like you said earlier.
Hmm. So I mentioned the club guide, which is amazing. It looks like a lot of fun. You're inviting readers to put on a whole party. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, if you're in first class on Titanic, what are you going to do every afternoon? You're probably going to go have tea. They did serve tea, and so when I look at book clubs, so many book clubs do some really interesting things. Um, and so I just thought, how fun would it be if you actually held like a cream tea and you could do all these fun things? So I did that for the book guide, and then I was like, what do I want to do for a book launch? And I actually did throw a bit of a party, and I opened it up to 40 people, and about half were personal invites, people I wanted to make sure could come, and then about 20 others who came. I rented the St. Mary's Boat Club, so right off the Northwest Arm in Halifax. And we did a cream tea, so scones with clotted cream and jam and tea. Everybody had a place card with a passenger, so they were that passenger. There were fresh flowers on the table, of course. And we just had a really fun afternoon of, I talked a bit about the book, and then we had this great tea, and there were a few prizes. There's a jewel thief element in the book, sort of a little subplot. So there was a prize that was centered around who's the jewel thief at your table, kind of thing, and little goodie bags for everybody that was personal. I partnered with a local company called Novelty, and they did a Ship of Dreams blend. So everyone got Ship of Dreams tea in their little goodie bag, and a local artisan did custom bookmarks for me. So everyone got a custom crocheted bookmark that it's very vintage looking and just fun stuff. And so that was, I mean, it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And silly me, just put it in the book club guide. And then I was like, oh, I should do that. And then all of this too. But like, what a fun time. So you can really make an event of it. If you're talking about Titanic, it should be an occasion, right? Book club should be an occasion anytime. I'm doing a silent book club this afternoon. So, um,
Wait a
you know,
minute. What is a silent book club?
you don't know? Okay,
No.
so a silent book club is when you get together. It's really gaining in popularity, Colin. You're gonna have to check it out. Because how many of us are so busy, we're like, oh my God, I'd just like to have an hour to read. So another writer friend of mine, Michelle Hallowell, this is the second time we've done this. We found a museum that is willing to host us, and we open it up. And there is a cost. We do it with a cost involved, and that's so that the proceeds go to the museum. And you come and have a little introductory chat. Then everyone disappears, whether it's out in the gardens. It's not going to be the gardens today. It's cold and wet, but somewhere in this historic house. Find a corner and you read in silence for an hour, but you're not alone. It's a community thing, which is such a neat vibe. And then at the end of the hour, everyone comes back. We have like some refreshments, tea, cookies, fruit, whatever. And then we have a few door prizes and we have a fun little chat because what's more fun than talking about what you're reading? I don't want to talk. I mean, as much as I love being here and talking about my book, I love talking about other people's books. So then what are you reading? Oh my goodness, that sounds so great, right? And it's just this really fun couple of hours of just being bookish people, but also you get to read for an hour in silence. It's beautiful. It's
No,
beautiful.
that sounds like a lot of fun. I had dinner with my mom last night and she was telling me about her books. Books I would never read, but she was, really into it. She was really having fun just telling me about the books she's reading.
Right? Like, and it's just, I don't know. Every time I do something like this, I come home and I feel like, ah, yes, I've been with my people for a few hours. I feel restored. Um, and yeah, so that's on our agenda for this afternoon.
Awesome. Well, can you tell us a little bit about how you measure success? Because when the world fell silent, your previous historical novel, I would say, has done really well, and now Ship of Dreams is being received really well. Did you expect any of that? How does it feel? Are you like, no, I want more? Like, where are you at?
Um, Success is a funny thing. I did not expect When the World Fell Silent to take off like it did, especially in Canada. It's still 2 years on. It's almost 2 years since it released, and it's still selling so well. Book clubs are still picking it up, which really kind of freaks me out a little bit, I'll be honest. And I found it actually really, I had a lot of anxiety in the beginning because I wasn't used to being so public facing. With romance, I hid behind my screen a lot. And so going out and doing events and more things and having people actually come to see me, I found that really, I'm a bit of an introvert, not shy, but I'm an introvert. And so I found that really, really difficult at first. Um, I will say, um, if we want to touch on the financial aspect, it's been nice. It's not. I can't say that, we've sold our house and bought a mansion or anything like that. Not at all. But we did get to take a vacation, and I didn't have to, break the bank for us to take a vacation. Um, And we're able to do a few little things that we weren't able to before. Um, but I find it hard to measure success that way because each book is different. Each book will be received differently. One will outperform another, and that's not anything I can control. So I'm not sure that's even my my success. But if I get to the end of the book that I've written and I'm happy with it, and I feel like I've told a good story, and I hear from readers and they say, "Oh, like, I love this book." It doesn't matter if it's 100,000 readers or 10 readers. Granted, my publisher would probably rather it was more than 10 readers. Um, but it doesn't really matter. It's more about like I love what I do, and I love telling those stories and bringing those stories to the world, and that's more my mission than anything else. Which is a good thing because I'm deadlined right now. And if I just thought about, all the external stuff, I think I'd find it very paralyzing. So for me, it's really about, what am I trying to say here and have I said it? And if I've done that and my publisher says, yes, wow, you said it. And they're like, let's do it. That's success for me. And everything else is, dare I say it, everything else is data and not something I can control. So really, I just want to tell stories and reach people, and otherwise the cards just sort of fall where they may.
Well, I think it's okay to have it both ways, have a,
Yeah,
reach readers and make an impact and to live your passions, but also to have a little financial incentive too, because it is so rare for authors who often like just breaking even financially is the goal. So, I mean, good for you. Celebrate that. To pay a few bills and go on a
yeah,
vacation. That's you've earned that.
yeah. And it's don't get me wrong, I'm happy when that hits my bank account and I can go like, oh, phew, I can
Well, I mean, how
sometimes
many
it's
other jobs out there are you expected to just work and not get paid for? So
right.
it really should just come with the territory. Unfortunately, it
Right.
doesn't.
Right. And I don't work for free. That's, but there's so much that's out of my controls because this is sales based. And so if I just focused on sales, I think that's chasing the wrong goal in
Hmm.
that it would lead me to a lot of anxiety. Like, oh, the numbers aren't with me this time. Oh my God, I should freak out because, what if the next book doesn't do as well? Doesn't matter. You just got to focus on the book.
Yeah.
Um, and and things will, I think I've been doing this a long time. This is my 20th year of publication. And I think the reason why I take that stance is because I've been through years that have been really great and then years that have been really not great. And and it always, there's always peaks and valleys. So you just ride it out and keep writing stories and it all comes around in the end. Just don't panic. And I think I'm a lot more easygoing about it now than I was, say, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. You know.
Can you talk a little bit more about focusing on the book because you are such a prolific writer at this point? How do you stay productive? How do you stay disciplined? Do you have any strategies or does it just come natural to you?
I wish I I used to have a really great set schedule, but there's four of us living in my house right now. One works 9 to 5. One is two. So so a little unpredictable, having a toddler in the house. And then my husband works shift work. And so he could be off on the weekend. He could be working on the weekend like he is this weekend. He could be off Monday to Friday, which, if I'm trying to, he's really good about letting me protect my work time. And so we just carve out, and I think we learned that during COVID because he worked from home. And so, he's really great about that. But my schedule is definitely not as firmed up as I would like. So I've had to learn how to work around that and really pick pockets of time. But I will say that I am much better writing in the morning. So I try to hit my writing time in the morning. And if I get more than that, then that's great. But if not, I don't stress about it. If my focus tends to slip in the afternoon, I'll do admin or I'll do housework. Ew. And yeah, it's not as regimented as it was when my kids were smaller and they were in school Monday to Friday, and my husband worked Monday to Friday. It's all different. So I just have learned to roll with it, but I try to be consistent. So I'm not panicking. That being said, my process is always the last 2 months before a book is like, especially historical fiction. I will write the last half of the book in the last 8 weeks. No question. And I will take 6 months to write the first half. I hate
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
it's what I do. And so I just kind of like, okay, no one's gonna like me for the last 6 weeks or so
Yeah.
books books due.
Maybe a little extra motivation to get it over the finish line.
Yeah, yeah, I'm so close right now. I gotta tell you, I'm within like 4 days of finishing.
Well, I want to let you get back to your writing. But before we wrap up here, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on next?
Sure. I have a feeling the title's going to change. The working title is Codename Songbird. It brings a bit of a Canadian slant to France in 1944. So we have a wire and two women again. I seem to really like two women as my heroines. One is a special operations executive agent from Britain who is a courier in France. And the other is a wireless operator who trains at Camp X, which was Canada's spy school for the SOE. And she goes over, finishes her training in England, and then is sent to France in the lead up to D-Day. So I did manage to make it to the UK in October and did some in-person research there. And I just got back, first week of April, I got back from Normandy. So I did make it to Paris and Normandy in April. And so all of that is happening on the page right now. They don't like each other very much, but they both have some pretty significant wounds. And so once they learn to trust each other, which is where I'm at right now, I think they're going to be pretty unstoppable. But no one comes out of D-Day unscathed. I will put it to you that way. It's like Ship of Dreams and When the World Fell Silent. Not everybody gets an ending that is wrapped up with a pretty little bow. That's not really realistic. So, but I always try to have an uplifting ending. So hopefully people will still be, happy with how this is going to turn out for for the characters involved. Anyway, I don't know why I decided to do a book set in three different countries. It was maybe a bit much to try to take on. But I'm getting there, and it's been endlessly fascinating. And talk about having to remember that the characters are the story and not, the resistance and special agents, in Normandy at, as we move into 1944. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, things that were happening behind the scenes there. So I have to constantly remind myself, no, this is not the story. Your story is the characters. And that has been my biggest challenge.
Well, it sounds like another very interesting, very fascinating novel, and good
I
luck
hope
with
so.
the next few days. Yeah, getting that first draft finished up. Well, Donna, thanks again for joining me. Congratulations on Ship of Dreams, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me back.